Hey folks, I want to talk to you about this application Readeo. I strongly recommend Readeo to help grandparents and parents read to their grandchildren remotely when they can't be in the same room. Whether you're living across the country, across the world, or you're just gone on a business trip, Readeo makes it easy for you to read to those young ones when you're away. It's a super easy tool that allows for video monitoring across the top of the screen so they can see you and you can see them, as well as having the book prominently displayed, making it easy for you to read to those young ones, or better yet, having them read to you. What I want you guys to do is go to cool-grandpa.us, look for the affiliate link for Readeo, click on that link, and sign up today for your free trial.
Do you also find it difficult to build up a meaningful relationship with your grandchildren at a distance? As a long-distance aunt to a 2-year-old in Australia, I wanted to create solutions for the millions of family members who cannot be physically together all the time. This is why I created Peekabond, an app that helps you to connect with young children at a distance. The app works with the following 3 steps. First, we give playful activities suggestions that are based on your child's development stage. These suggestions are science-based and gamified. Secondly, you can create a private family circle. And finally, we'll let you send videos back and forth so you don't have to be live at the same time, and save them in one spot for your grandchild to watch. We've got over 120 content suggestions. You can build a love bank for your grandchildren. And if you go to the Cool Grandpa website and look for the affiliate links, sign up for a newsletter with a lot of inspiring content, or you can try the app for free.
Welcome back into the Cool Grandpa Podcast. Glad you are joining us. Our conversation is with Ed Gaffney. Now, some of you may remember Ed from our conversation with him and his wife about using RVing to strengthen relationships with grandchildren and the fun it is to go out and hit the open road, hit some national parks, and enjoy the adventure with the young grandchildren. Ed and I are going to sit down and talk about all sorts of things. His experience with being a grandfather with a blended family, and just how the grandkids have all gotten along and how the family is meshed. So you're going to really enjoy this conversation. And Ed's got some great insights on how to schedule activities with grandchildren and how to properly, I think, set your expectations as a grandparent about when you go to visit national parks or when you go out on adventures with the grandchildren, just so that you understand and can remember the attention span and what is fun for younger grandchildren. So, without further ado, let's jump into this conversation. Hello, and welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This is your host, Greg Payne, coming at you from Studio 12. This podcast is about being the best possible grandpa you can be, focusing on what it is to be a grandpa and how we can all share that experience together for our grandchildren. Hi, Ed. Welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. I really do appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us and talk about your experience with being a grandfather.
Hi, Greg.
One of the questions that I always love to talk to grandfathers about is what they remember from their experience when they heard that they were going to be a grandfather for the first time. Do you mind sharing that memory with us?
No, it's a beautiful memory, too. We need to understand that we have 7 children between us. 5 of them are mine and 2 are Jeannie's, my wife's, and in that group, there are 6 girls and 2 boys, or 1 boy, excuse me. So my biological daughter had her child while Jeannie and I were in a concert, a Billy Joel concert here in Birmingham. And we got the phone call, which put us on a plane first thing the next morning to fly up to Baltimore so that we could be with them. And that was just, we're just so excited. It was a great concert. What a great way to top off the evening.
And if I remember right from when we had talked before, that was the Elton John, Billy Joel tour some years ago.
That's correct. Yeah. Some years ago, she's now 19 and as a freshman in college.
Wow. Wow. Now, one of the things I'd like to find out is, and we talked with grandfathers that live really close, almost the same neighborhood in some cases, and those that have some distance between them, about how they were able to start to establish and grow that relationship with their grandchildren. Do you mind sharing some of your insights on your granddaughter started to get older, some of the things that you used to do?
Well, we have 9 grandchildren in the Maryland area and 2 grandchildren here in Birmingham, our home. And, establishing a relationship with the 2 boys that are close by was no problem. We spent lots of time with them doing lots of things, and including our camping activities. The ones up north presented a challenge because they're at least 800 miles away from our home. So we made an effort to take our motorhome up to Baltimore, probably 3 times a year. And my son-in-law had an outlet, a 30 amp outlet placed at the house. So we had access to power because we like to stay in the motorhome in the driveway. And then all the kids accumulate at my one daughter's house. And, it's been terrific. Alternatively, we have had the kids visit us in Birmingham, or we meet up with them at the beach. We'll rent either a house or a few close by condos for a week. So we've had pretty good times together, opportunities to get together. The last couple of years with COVID has kind of put a damper on that, but we're reestablishing our trips now. So, in fact, in the next month, we're getting together with one family from Baltimore, going to the beach, and in a week and a half, another family's actually moving down to Birmingham. So,
Oh, very nice. So they'll be
yeah,
closer.
that'll be good.
You'll have a group closer in.
Yes, absolutely.
One question I've got for you is, in between those visits, when you were going up to the Baltimore area, what were some of the ways that maybe you used to try to keep in touch with the grandchildren? Did you have special phone calls or dates and times set aside to talk to them, or use, some of the technology that's come about over the years?
Well, we do stay in touch on Twitter and sometimes on Facebook. I like to message them a lot because kids are kind of hard to get a hold of using the phone, but I make a real effort to reach them on special occasions, particularly birthdays, and have a long conversation. And they're pretty engaging. I mean, it's amazing how open kids can be, and that's just great to talk to them. It makes me feel all warm and fuzzy.
Sure. Now, how do you feel like the relationship has changed and evolved with the grandkids from the time that they were very young until now, where your granddaughter's a freshman in college?
I think that as they've gotten more mature, the relationship has actually gotten tighter. Not based on just frivolous things like toys and playing, but they actually want to discuss things and are interested in opinions, and we can exchange our ideas. And that happens quite frequently. In fact, my daughter called me the other day and wanted me to call the granddaughter who's in college and see if there's anything wrong, because she sensed that perhaps she was having some difficulty. So I acted as a spy and called my granddaughter. I got no pertinent information out of her, but at least I made the effort and could report back to my daughter. And the one of Jeannie's grandchildren, we're very close to the grandsons here in Birmingham, and he's off at college. He's in Middle Tennessee State University, and I've been trying to help him very, very much with finding sources of income so that he can continue his activities. He wants to be a commercial pilot. So that puts it on a different level, a more mature level of conversation about important topics.
What's been interesting when I've been talking with other grandparents is how much they have felt that being able to establish those early relationships, whether the grandchildren are toddlers or early elementary, being able to use play and special moments to build those bonds helps to pay off down the road in those high school and college years. Would you agree with that?
Yes, we certainly agree with that. Back in the old days, when I was younger, I could go out and play sports with those kids on different occasions. At the age of 80, I'm not sure I want to run the backyard and play soccer and football and all that good stuff. But yeah, we played a lot. And as we talked about before, we took the two young boys here camping all the time, and a lot of hiking, a lot of fishing, a lot of any activity to keep them involved and engaged.
Right. And just to remind people, did have Ed and Jeannie on earlier talking about RVing, primarily with the grandson. So we'll put a link to that conversation in the show notes for this conversation. So if you hadn't listened to that, you can go back and listen to those experiences. But I love the fact that you're able to have those conversations, especially with your daughter calling up and checking in on the granddaughter at college, because I find too that when I'm talking with grandparents that have those older relationships, that there is a level of being a confidant, of being somebody that's a coach in that mentor role that switches over. Grandpas are always fun. We always do enjoyable activities, but I'm talking with people with those older grandchildren that find out that role shifts from being, hey, grandpa's taking us out for ice cream and those activities that we do when they're younger, to being able to have those conversations where grandchildren may not feel as comfortable going to their parents about something.
I think it was about a year and a half ago, we were all sitting around, 5 of the grandkids and myself were sitting around an outdoor table on my daughter's deck. And, I was just one of the gang. I mean, we all talked freely back and forth and to the exclusion of their parents. And I was the only older person in the group and just had a great time. And let me share with you another story that was particularly touching. One of the girls, while we were at the beach, I think she was 12 or 13. She came over and asked me if I'd like to go for a walk on the beach with her. So I did. And as we're going along, I'm sort of holding her hand. She says, "Well, Granddad, how have you been?" And that mature question, I wasn't sure how to answer it. I looked at her and said, "Well, honey, I've been just fine."
That's awesome that she was checking in with Granddad to see how he was doing and what was going on with his life. That's awesome.
Right. It was wonderful. We get, the kids will send us cards. And when they were little, they'd send us things that they drew. And I think I've kept them all. I have files on every grandchild downstairs in a drawer. So I've got 11 files for 11 grandkids.
That's great. One of the things that I really enjoyed receiving from my mom, and it's bittersweet for sure, but when my grandfather had passed, I used to, when I was younger and on business trips, I'd send him a postcard from wherever I was at doing, whatever implementations, working with whatever customer, and he had kept those. And I was able to get those things back, and he would go through those. And my mom, when she was out visiting, would always comment about how special that was, that he would receive these just random postcards from, Des Moines, Iowa, or Dallas, Texas, or wherever, I might be at that point. But I had also sent birthday cards and things as well. But it was interesting from the grandson's perspective to receive those things back and know that they meant a lot to my grandfather.
I remember my mother died several years ago, but as an only child, it was my responsibility to take care of her household. And when I went in and opened this one large drawer, she had all these cards from all of her grandkids sitting in there. And that's, of course, my children. And she kept them in chronological order. And I think she had every card that was ever sent to her. And my children were very, very attentive to my mother. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, these are special things.
Well, and I think sometimes too in this day of technology, and we're certainly using, as you were talking about, Twitter and Facebook Messenger, is that it's important for both children, grandchildren, and grandparents not to forget the importance of a handwritten out card or something that you can send through the mail that's really tangible and sticks with you, because it's going to be hard to find that special text message that you received 5 years ago from
right.
someone, you know? And that's not saying, hey, don't use these tools. They're certainly important, but they're really meant to be an in the moment conversation where cards and letters, I think, can carry some weight even years after they were sent and received.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head, because I make a special effort every time I send a child a card to put in a note, at least a couple of paragraphs of interest in what they're doing, telling them a little bit what we're doing, and then, of course, sign off with all of our love. So I don't know if they save any of those cards, but I certainly save everything I get from them.
Sure. Well, I'm sure some of them don't survive, but then others will. And, and I think that's just natural of being kids. We always put stuff and forget about it, or it gets put somewhere and gets lost or whatnot. But there are those moments where they're going to look back, they're going to find something in a sock drawer that was written to them a few years back, and it'll be meaningful for them. Now,
yeah, very special. Yep.
Now, one of the things that I did want to touch on as well is when you were going to visit the granddaughters up in Maryland, and you were having that time up there, did you ever carve out particular time on your visit that this was granddad time? This is, and a special activity around that?
Well, we've done some special trips with them. One that was particularly nice was a trip to Gettysburg. We gathered up as many grandchildren as possible, at least the older ones, and we put them in a couple of cars, and we went down to Gettysburg and toured the park together. And I think they thoroughly enjoyed that. Got a little boring after a while, of course, but that's only natural.
It's tough on young kids to sit there and really appreciate it. I think, they can enjoy the trip up and enjoy the museum, especially at Gettysburg. I was there a year or so ago. But driving around and listening to the recording and stopping every quarter mile and getting out and checking the scenery, certainly as a young child, I can imagine that they're a little bit like, okay, it's green, it's rocky, there's statues around. What's next?
Right. The more we talk in this podcast, the more memories pop into my head. And I just wanted to share one more with you of a young grandson who lives in Gaithersburg. And at school, he refused to learn how to read. And so one evening, I don't know whether I was overbearing or just being granddad, we sat down and started reading books. And I made him read with me. And by the end of the evening, he admitted he knew how to read. And ever since then, he's just a very bright young boy. He's been fine. But I think my daughter will be forever grateful that I started him down that road, because she was so frustrated.
Yeah, and was that just, well, I guess according to the story, that was just him playing off that he didn't want to read and couldn't read. Do you
That's
think?
what I concluded. Yeah. I mean, he was too bright not to know how to read, but he picked it up pretty quickly. And I think he was pretty happy that he gained the confidence to go ahead and step out and do this.
What, do you think the key was you helping him maybe finding books or subjects that had interested him that maybe others hadn't?
Well, I think the key was that he and I were alone and was able to bond over this one issue, and that he picked it up from there. I didn't pick out particular books. He had some books there, and I just grabbed a few and we started to read.
Okay. So it wasn't so much that, I'm making this up, that he was a Baltimore Ravens fan or an Orioles fan, and you found some books about the Ravens or the Orioles for him to, sit down and read.
No, actually, I think he was too young to be a fan of any of the teams at that point.
Okay.
Now, I do have another grandson who, at the age of 8, knows every player on the Orioles team, every player on the Ravens, every player at Penn State.
Wow.
And he'll get on the phone with me and we'll talk about things regarding sports that I have no idea where he got there with it, but he knows a lot more than I do about the teams and who the players and so forth.
Now, does he ever ask you about players that you may have seen growing up or famous players in Baltimore? For instance, I mean, Cal Ripken's been retired forever and a day at this point in his life, right? But has he asked you about those types of players?
No, he hasn't asked me, but I volunteered some information. And I remember, of course, when I grew up, it was the Pittsburgh Pirates because I was from the Pittsburgh area. And I had the opportunity to take Bill Mazeroski and Bob Skinner and Dick Grote fishing one day. And they were on that World Series National Championship team. And so I like to share those memories with him to let him know I'm not completely lacking any knowledge in the sports world.
Wow.
But we're all Penn State fans because I worked at Penn State for 20 years. And of course, all the kids are Penn State fans, and therefore all the grandchildren have to be Penn State fans. So we talk a lot about that sport.
Oh, yeah. Well, I had plenty of friends when I was growing up in the D.C. area that ended up going to Penn State. A lot of them went through the engineering program up there, and remember going up to Happy Valley for a few football games myself and thoroughly enjoyed that area.
Right. So,
well, and then I guess the part of the follow-up is, how does the grandson receive the news that you knew some of the guys off of that 79 World Series team? Is it something where he starts to look up those stats and those players and then, comes back and has that connection with you?
Well, I wish I could say he did. It flamed up this, but I'm not sure it did. Probably just absorbed the information and went away. So,
well, sure.
But he's got, it's just fantastic talking to him because he just continues to fill my head with information about various sports and players.
Well, and it's a great connection point, using baseball or sports or hobby.
And all these kids play sports, so I try and keep up with them as much as possible. They're even in college, they're playing. Lacrosse is a big deal these days with them. One of them plays baseball. Several play soccer, a lot of soccer.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the one grandson played linebacker in high school for a little bit till he had a concussion. He decided that was the end of his sporting career, and he ducked out of that. But yeah, sports has played a major role in all their lives, along with their academics.
And do you find that when you were at the sporting events, talking to them about how practices were going, how games were going, that they felt like they could even share that connection with you with some of the activities from your past, being and talking to you in terms of, I'm sure they had struggles with practices, with coaches. At certain point, even if you love something, it's going to be miserable at some point. Practice is cold and rainy and nasty and you want to quit. Did you feel like you had a good connection and that they were listening to you differently versus their parents when it came to some of those trials and tribulations with sports and hanging in there?
I'm not sure that they shared any more with me than they shared with their parents, but we certainly heard a lot about practice, and a coach would leave, or particular players were having trouble, or they were having trouble in one sense or the other. But it's just been a grand time being part of their lives in sports. In fact, tonight we're going to a soccer game, high school soccer game. One of the kids here is a junior in high school. He's starting on the varsity squad.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's an impressive accomplishment.
But we're just hoping the weather holds and it doesn't rain.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how do you feel like you've been able to navigate some of the, growing pains and some of the things that normal kids go through in terms of, those early teen years and some of the natural rebellion and pushing away from the family? Tricks or tips that you have for maintaining that closeness with the grandkids?
Well, quite honestly, I think the grandparents are in a much better position than the parents to interact with children during their teenage years. And it's because those kids really don't react against us at all. They include us in everything. They never shut us out. They make a special effort to get together with us. And so we're very blessed in that sense. I do hear the other side of the story from the parents. But I'm a grandparent. I don't have to listen to all that and believe it. So, they do no wrong, correct?
Right. They're perfect. If there's anything amiss, it's the parents' fault.
Well, I think the other aspect of all that is we grow older as grandparents and become more mature in the way in which we deal with younger people. No one ever wrote a book on how to be a parent that worked. And we've learned a lot, and now we can apply that in how we talk and deal with grandchildren.
Yeah.
We're much more receptive to who they are. And I think we understand what they're going through a little bit better at their age, because I remember what it was like to be a teenager, and it wasn't pretty at times. And so I'm very forgiving.
Sure. And I think, too, as grandparents, we have a couple of things, right? One is we're not focused on the day-to-day raising of the kids and setting boundaries and that kind of interaction that can cause friction, especially when children are trying to search for their own independence, their own way in the world. And then, two, we've got the perspective of time, where I think sometimes even when I was in my 20s, 30s, and early 40s, I may be thinking of time being very immediate, similar to children, right? Everything, if they have a bad afternoon, the world is ending, Yep. And then as you get older, it's like, oh, if you have a bad afternoon, you're just having a bad afternoon.
Right.
And as grandparents, I think we get to that point of going, okay, something's going on at school, something's going on with relationships, whatever this is, it's not the end of the world. It may seem like it. They may have failed a quiz. They may have done something, but we have that perspective of it's not the end of the world, and when they're 50 years old, nobody's going to care that they got an F on their calculus, quiz.
Well, you're absolutely right. And we're also, we're not a threat as parents are a threat. We don't come in and we're angry at our mother because we're a 13-year-old daughter, just to be angry at our mother because she doesn't understand me. We're at arm's length in that sense, but I think we're a lot wiser sometimes than parents in seeing what young children are going through.
Sure. As we start to wrap this up, is there anything about grandparenting or advice that you would have for newer grandparents like myself that, my oldest grandchild is 3.5 years old, so I'm kind of brand new in this game. Is there any advice that you would offer for us to help build these relationships?
Well, first of all, we all have to understand that these kids are going to grow up much faster than we ever anticipated. And so here we are looking at 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 18, 16-year-olds, and we don't remember where all that time went. So it's very important that we spend as much time and interact with these kids as much as possible. Take them out for ice cream, go to a movie, get away from the parents, have a fun with them because they make us younger. And we establish bonds that will never be broken. I mean, this is the way in which we create memories, and it makes grandparents smile.
Now, is there anything about grandparenting or even your relationship with the grandchildren that I haven't asked you that you would like to share?
Well, I can't recall anything at this point in time, but I will say I'm very thankful for all the opportunities that we've had as a mixed marriage with 2 girls from one side and 4 girls and a boy from the other side. The early years presented some challenges in making sure everybody understood that this was a new family. And we're very fortunate in that everybody came together and everybody looks out for each other and everybody knows each other. And we have vacationed with kids from both sides of the family at the same time. And the grandkids actually think they're all cousins. So that the 2 boys here think they're cousins with the ones up north and vice versa. And that's only happened because we've really worked at it. We've treated everybody equally, and we've tried to spend as much time in mixed groups as possible. And so if anyone out there as a grandparent encounters this situation where there are new marriages, I think this is a very sensitive topic, and you have to do everything you can to make sure that all the kids understand you're still their grandparents.
Oh, that's great advice because, and I especially love the idea of making sure that there's the activities together with the new family unit and building that in. I think that's really important to blend that those activities. So,
well, kids are much more open than adults are, and so they enjoy each other's company, and they seem to work it out a lot easier than sometimes the adults do. So, as long as you present the opportunities for them to be together and to do things, it'll all work out.
Well, Ed, I sure do appreciate you being on the Cool Grandpa podcast and sharing your experiences and your knowledge with us. And just wanted to, again, say thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Oh, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm glad you're doing this. I think it's got all kind of potential.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this conversation with Ed. It was great to connect with him again. I enjoyed his insight on how that blended family has been able to come together and mesh, how the children were able to get in and really develop and build those strong relationships as the older members of the family took a little bit longer. That was an interesting point. I also enjoyed how Ed had talked about using the technology that the grandkids are using to stay connected with them, to meet them where they are. So if they're using Twitter or Facebook Messenger or other technologies, I think it's important that grandfathers learn how to use that technology and then be able to connect with those grandkids. If you found this conversation interesting, I would love it if you would share it with someone. That's the best way that we can grow this audience, as well as reach and inspire and hopefully motivate other grandparents to reach out and be intentional with their relationships. So until next time, I want you to remember to stay cool. Thank you for listening to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and share it with a friend. That's the best way you can help us to expand our community, as well as get the news out about how valuable grandpas are in the lives of those kids. If you'd like to leave me a comment or shoot me a potential topic for this podcast, please go to www.cool-grandpa.us. Look for the comments tab, fill it out, hit submit. It's as easy as that. Until next time, remember to stay cool.